Welcome and thank you for tuning in to the home of the most competitive game coverage, most intense unit analysis, and the highest of high-level plays ever seen by two casuals who barely know where the rule booklet is. You're listening to This is for Worlds. Let us join Aaron and Phi and see what competitive topic is on the docket today. Hi and welcome back to This is for Worlds. I'm Phi.
And I'm Aaron.
And we got a little bit different of a podcast for our listeners today. Don't really have a lot of battle reports that we're going to go over and talk about a lot of our games. But we've kind of come up with three topics that we're going to cover a little bit later. But first, Modeling for Advantage are one of our regular segments. You have anything you've been working on?
Yeah, I actually finished it up this morning and posted it on our Instagram. Go check it out. This is for Worlds. Oh yeah, engagement. I talked about Uncharted Seas last time, the out-of-print fantasy naval combat game, and I finished up last night and got them sealed up this morning. Basically a starter fleet plus a couple blisters of extras. So I sent those to Adam to try and tempt him to play on Wednesday, since we're both off that day. I was hoping to have more done, because as with a lot of games, there was a second edition printing of the starter set comes with different ships, which should be here tomorrow. So if it shows up soon enough, I can pick it up before work. I can probably get it done in time for Wednesday if I don't sleep. So.
Sleep is for the weak.
Yeah. That's really all I've done since the last time we chatted. So, what about you?
That's fair. Once again, I have not touched any of my minis, despite specifically saying we were going to play Victory at Sea tomorrow, purely because we have a gentleman that reached out in one of the groups and was very interested in playing. So I was like, ooh, it's going to be motivation to get that shit painted, and ideally I think I would have had like Friday, Saturday, Sunday to get it done, and technically even tonight, but we're recording tonight and my week was fucking bullshit last week, so I pretty much slept in, barely got up in time on Saturday to go teach Isaac Star Wars Unlimited. And felt and looked like I was just dragging ass all over, just not existing. But caught back up on that sleep on Sunday and felt so much better going into this week. About the only thing I did was go through and put all of the Warsaw Pact Team Yankee stuff in a box and slide it into storage, because those are never really an army that I was incentivized to play real early. I just started the collection because there was a store that I randomly stop at when a customer site has me nearby, and they had two of the essentially special edition VDV starters, and I was like, well, guess that's how my Cubans get their start. And so I periodically just stop by and get a couple pieces of whatever they have in stock, except for the West Germans, because I just have so much. But I like supporting that store, so if I see a box of T-55s, I pick them up, or whatever else they may have, because worst comes to worst, I can probably fling it and finish. But everything I put away was like the VDV box, a few like artillery pieces. I think there's a couple infantry packs, a few other things. It's about as close to hobbying I have done, other than researching how to do white on decals, because that still pisses me off that it's like there was one company that made I want to say civilian, but that's like not the word for it. Private,
Hmm.
non-commercial, I guess.
Okay.
Printer that did white, ALPS. Um, but they went
What's
out of business.
ALPS?
Huh?
ALPS?
Yeah, that's the printer manufacturer that made white
Oh, okay.
printers. But they went out of business in like 2011, 2013, something like that. So way before I ever got into my decal making, because it's like legitimately the only thing that pisses me off that I can't do, which is frustrating because a lot of the Nordinovik stuff that I have has white. So the alternate is you get like a printer that uses toner cartridges, and instead of black toner, you use white toner. But then I have to redesign all the graphics. Um,
Then you also have to deal with the fact that, like, printer cartridges are a racket.
uh, I found a decent company. I think
Fair enough.
Ghost. I think is the name of it. I have to double check. But they're like specifically designed to not be that racket to the point where they don't make printers. They just tell you the printers that their stuff's compatible with, and so all you do is buy
Okay.
the
Yeah.
ink toners, which I think is a better market. I haven't dug too deep into it yet because I don't really have room for a second printer, so I don't know what like if it's really worth it. But I just get more and more frustrated and more to the point where I'm like, you know what? I will pay for a um, uh, custom decal maker to make my sheet for me because I haven't figured out how to do it yet, and without spending like 15 grand for a printer, which is
Yeah.
insane. My last truck didn't even cost that much. So outside of that, I haven't really been doing much hobby wise. Uh, I didn't get any gaming in since the last time we did Blood Red Skies. I think.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The
Which we
the
talked
three side
about.
battle with John.
Yeah, which we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
You're the only one. We've gotten a number of card games in, and no one seems to have been in the mood for Legion lately. But I got a feeling that that's because Emerald City Comic Con is this weekend, so a lot of people, save up or know they're not going to have a lot of free flowing cash after. Um, so they're not really going to have the time to play uh, stuff like that. So yeah, I don't even have any past week's world qualifying for us to go over. I know you at least got one victory at sea game, which we can go over real quick if you want. But as we mentioned to
Uh.
our user or our listeners earlier, uh, I think we got like three contentious conjectures for later.
Yeah.
We were going to
We
cover
can
last
quickly
time.
go over. Yeah.
Yeah,
I got tabled pretty bad. Those horrifically good dice that you were so against.
finally
The
gave out.
dice karma came back.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, horrifically bad. I mean, I was slinging plenty of dice. Like I was setting up decent shots. I'm like, okay, cool. They're on 4+, or at least if it's 5+, anything that hits is a crit because it has the heavy keyword. And we were playing 2K, 2,000 points, and I think he had me down to like 17,000, or he had killed 1,700 points worth of stuff. And all I had managed to outright kill was 110 point, uh, like light cruiser. I beat the bejesus out of the Missouri though. Like it was effectively a floating wreck. It had no turrets. It bridge was hit. It had I think that was the vital it had on it. It was dead in the water. I had rolled like 3d6 3 times because it got to the end of the critical tree on one of the ones. I can't remember. I think it was the yeah. He kept repairing, his weapons, which allowed me to hit the turret destroyed options 3 times. Because if you go through the tree once, you only destroy 2 turrets.
Yeah.
Uh,
Fair.
and I managed to get a destroyer up there right behind, because the Mo basically had been traveling from my left to right along his long edge of the board, just like lobbing shots. Uh, and I got a destroyer up in the ass end of it, and I was like, "This is the best. This is like the best shot I'm gonna get. Like if I can sink that thing, it costs 700-800 points. I'll still lose, but it won't be such a horrific loss." And yeah, God, I rolled like some obscene amount of vitals on it, and the thing wouldn't die. So, but John had a good time, so there's that.
It's kind of good. I know we've
But
been beating up on him a little bit.
yes, quick aside, when you were talking about you picked up starter sets for when you picked up the starter sets for the VDB. I was talking to the store manager the other day, and we are going to give Victory at Sea, at least as a product that we carry, like one more try, just because the game's not
Oh.
cheap. So at first, we're going to bring in 2 of each starter fleet, see how that does.
Yeah.
So I'm excited because I want to start Germans, and I want to use my discount. So
Shit. Do the French have a starter?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the website often. Like because there are like or is it just major? Or are there also minor nations?
I mean, you can essentially count
Ouch. Yeah.
Italy and France as minor nations. I think the expansion has Russian, but there's like no official models for it. But it's mainly like Japan, America, Britain, and Germany as like the main four with a crap ton of ships, which is why I'm like, yeah, I'd play a French nation because I like punishing myself and not having good options. Like I do have the American fleet like literally sitting not even 6 feet away from me right now with their base at least done. They just need a little bit of slap chop over the rest of the basically the ships themselves painted. But I'm a glutton for punishment. I'll take a really small French navy and throw it on my table there to get smacked and beat. Because that's just how I am. Although I don't know if they get submarines. Automatic fail if they don't have submarines. I can't play them.
You can ally in German and play
Wait,
Vichy France.
what do you mean ally in?
I'm just talking out my ass. I'm just finding a way for it to make logical sense.
That is a little bit of a cool thing that if they would allow like oh they were joined at this maybe a little more product friendly, I guess. Being able to take like, oh, the British and the Germans teamed up, or not the Germans, the British and the Americans teamed up to like hunt down the Bismarck in the Northern Sea, or like something, so you can like also reenact things like Greyhound. Just the two nations working together to get the fleet across, stuff like that. That'd be pretty cool. I mean, we can home rule that shit.
I'm sure there's, if not us, then somebody's got something else out there.
Yeah, we also need to re-explore the like creating admirals section of like the expansion, or was that the previous?
That was the previous edition of the book.
Ah,
Yes, because come to find out, that is Mongoose Publishing originally made Victory at Sea, and then I don't know if Warlord Games acquired it or the company, and then they did the second edition.
interesting. Yeah, because I think I remember you mentioning that, and I was like really surprised and confused, especially since there's Russians there, but Warlord doesn't have Russian fleets, but they make like for other games Russian stuff, so it just felt like it missed out a little bit. But
Yeah.
um, Yeah, so at least, sounds like John had some fun finally getting in a whooping.
Oh yeah, he I've learned how to lose a lot in my gaming career, so it doesn't bother me, but he certainly gets into it. So,
Yeah, I get it.
I to be fair, I was almost like cuz sometimes I like that game a lot, but the crit like having a million ships that can have a lot of crit stacking in terms of like the trees
Yeah,
can get a little brain intensive. So sometimes I'm like, I'm just gonna take the Yamato and 1,200 points because I don't want to think that much.
yeah.
And I was like, I could take two ships and get to 1725. So, but I took like a little more balanced of a force, both
Where's the
big
fun in
guns.
that?
Yep, right. Should have taken Yamato and Nagato and just picked
Ugh,
something and shot at it till it died.
that sounds awful. Like I wouldn't want to fight that at all.
Yeah, you say that. I mean, this last time the Nagato did basically nothing. I think it was all torpedo shots that fucked up the Missouri. But it was like pulling teeth. Like I had to shoot every torpedo I had at that one ship to do anything. So
That's fair.
anyway, but yeah, that's all. That was all I did. Yeah, I didn't have. We don't do D&D on this podcast, so none of those shenanigans to cover.
No, and I've long since given up the campaign that I was DMing for my wife and some friends. So not really my kind of vibe. Like I still enjoy listening to stuff, seeing things, and taking in the exploits of other players. But fantasy's never really been my jam. So, but there is that Cowboy Bebop RPG sitting right there. I've still not.
Just waiting for you.
Yep, I like reading it. It's interesting and cool. So shall we get into our contentious conjectures?
Yes.
Cool, because I want to get to the one that was making me hot even before I started recording, and was like, nope, we definitely need to
Yeah.
save this.
While the fire's hot, yeah.
Yeah, because
While you're bent out of shape, let's get it. Let's do it now.
whoa. It's not. I wouldn't say I've been out of shape. It's just frustrated that if a game essentially has a learning mode, people don't necessarily see it as such. And that's either like they see it as a shortcoming for how the game is, how that section is like developed and played, or they still take it like super serious, super competitive, and still take it as an opportunity to get a win, because a win is a win, regardless of whether or not you encourage a player to continue, in the gaming community with you. So, like, what originally brought this up was consuming other media. It was mentioned that they really think that Legion needs a revamp on Skirmish. Their 500 point played on a 3x3 game mode. And the argument was it's not fun. The only thing it is fast, and there's no point to it even existing. And when I heard that, I was like, tell me you aren't teaching learning games like every week or every other week, and that you're not that invested in growing your own specific community without telling me those things. Because that, as I was saying earlier, is like 90% of the games that I teach are skirmish games. Because inevitably what happens is I'll have someone reach out on Discord, or someone will reach out to the store, and then you and I are recommended as like, hey, reach out to so and so. They will be more than happy to teach you the game, go through it, help you understand, because obviously the rule book that comes in the starter sets is extremely out of date, and if you don't know what you're Googling, you can end up on the old FFG RRG and rule book, which doesn't apply anymore. So it's like really good to have those playing games. And 9 times out of 10, the only thing they come to the table with is I have the core set of, Clone Wars or Galactic, and they will say, I have these minis. And maybe they pick up an extra box of something that they were just like, oh man, I love Vader and I really love Death Troopers. So like I bought the core box and I bought this extra Special Forces box. Or I love Luke and I love Sabine, so I bought these two to go together. Whatever is the thing that sparks the joy in them for seeing their favorite fandom in plastic form. So normally, even if they show up with that, technically that's like a majority of the time with points updates, it's not enough to actually even get them close to 500 without like just handing them a stack of spare upgrades. Which, I mean, given that I've been in Legion essentially since right after release, I think Palpatine and Wookiees is roughly the wave that I joined, which I think was wave 2 or 3, somewhere around there. Um, like it's gone through a lot of rebalancing, so with all the cards that I have during this time frame, there's a lot of stuff that I don't necessarily use anymore, or I have so many duplicates of that, like I can just literally, throw out these upgrades like they are, dollar bills, y'all, and help them get that point list where they can. But it's still difficult sometimes. Because like the most expensive thing is going to be, usually the Vader. But then like Stormtroopers have dropped to like 44 points now. And their heavies aren't super expensive. So when you got like Vader, 2 Storms, and a the 74Z, it's just it's not a lot. So that's for one. Is like I can't put them on a 6x4 or a 6x3 and be like, all right, we're gonna play normal missions, and I'm gonna expect you to pick up everything as we're going. And it's like, no. Whole reason skirmish exists is because it's a great teaching format. Because the missions, objectives, deployments, conditions are all super simple, and it doesn't require you to have everything to play or spend close to $400 now on things to be able to fill an 800 point list. So, like that's kind of the first one, and that's mainly more towards Legion or games that have the smaller point counts, to where it's more user friendly. Like Team Yankee, we don't always have to play 100, 98, 150, 120, whatever the high end is. If someone's like, hey, I just bought these couple things, it's like, cool, we're just gonna do like a little scouting skirmish where you bring your like Humvees, your like couple infantry platoon, and like I don't care about forces at this point. I'm just trying to teach you the basic. We can get into list building once I've got that hook in you. Same with Victory at Sea. Kind of the same for Blood Red Sky. Kind of the same for Armada. Is like they're flexible enough where you can play those smaller games where people are just excited to play the thing that got them all excited. Which brings me to that second of like people don't understand, or people are unwilling to, be humble enough to take that loss because a win is a win, regardless of if that person actually knows the rules, regardless of if they're going to continue being a member in the community. You got that win and you're undefeated, baby. Because
Yeah,
that's some.
that's an incredibly incredibly sweaty attitude to have. Uh, it it's also kind of tone deaf because it's like you can't handle something not being specifically for you, specifically what you want. Um, it's interesting you bring it up that they have to get that win. They're what is it? Privateer Press. They make War Machine and Hordes. Originally, they worked. A lot of those guys worked for Games Workshop. They made a lot of good products for them. Then they left. That's why everybody loved War Machine and Hordes. And it had, I think it was like the rule, page 2 rules or something like that, where like play like you got a pair. It's a game of being offensive. Is you're not meant to turtle,
Sure.
but people took it the wrong way where they thought it was the kind of thing where it's all tournament all the time. That's the way it's meant to be played. And Adam, another person that plays games with us at the store, it's one of his favorite stories to tell about that community in that game is that he bought an army, painted it, went to go learn, and a dude brought his like world level tournament winning list. And it was the kind of list that had a combo where Adam didn't even get to play in a teaching game.
Yeah.
And just it blows my mind that people can't just let it be like maybe is it not okay that this particular product's not for you? Why does it have to be something? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just yeah, very frustrating.
And I mean that delves more into what you and I were talking about, how this other media and its creators were talking about, how they would change it or just abolish it, and it's like, or you just make something that benefits what you want and you leave this alone, because skirmish has never been a big draw for anybody. Every time we've tried to run it at the store for a tournament or just a game day, it has always been our smallest event in terms of player turnout. It is just not as exciting. Um, it's very easy to have a bunch of overpowered things because your range bands are now, reaching the other side of the table without, having to move too far on turn one. So I get that aspect, but for the most part, I just look at it as it's purely a learning tool. It is the thing that you show people to get them, that first, bump, that first line of coke, first one's free, you're always coming back kind of thing. Because then, if you can turn around, you can showcase other members of your community who are super positive, super energetic, able to be engaging, help them get their feet, talk them through what they like. This is a big example with like what happened with Link. Link came in, looked at the Star Wars wall, was like, I love Rebels, I love Indoor, I'm just going to buy things because I don't know yet. So he bought a bunch of things. And now, over time, after getting his learning game, he was very quick to understand that like not everything works together in terms of like just because you buy a thing at Ewoks, just because you buy Rebel Trooper and this and that, buying the Mandos first and the Mandalorian, but not having a commander, not buying a core set, stuff like that. Uh, it would have been very easy for me to look at him and go, that's not a real army. You can't play that. I can't teach you until, you spend more money. Instead, it was really easy to look at me and go, hey, this isn't quite a full army, but what we're going to do is we're going to modify this a little bit. I'm going to give you a couple models to augment your list so it works. And we're just going to run through a couple learning games. Because there is the I don't want to teach you bad rules kind of thing and bad habits, but I still want you to enjoy and see that there is flexibility. So we were able to still put most of his models on the table for the learning game, and he like maintained that excitement and is now running his own like D&D Star Wars Legion cross campaigns with like two of the other guys in the group, and like it's just one of those things where if I was that person or you were that person when talking to him about the game, we don't know if we'd ever see him again. Like there's a couple people from our slow grow league that I wonder if they hadn't had certain experiences with other players who wanted that experience of a win is a win regardless of where I am and what the purpose of something is, if they would have come back. And we know that one of them probably almost wouldn't have, because he came, and asked a couple questions later and told us that his experiences, you know, with certain players. And it just goes to like, is the win? I don't know. I feel like we're kind of rambling at this point. It was just super frustrating to like hear how people will twist learning games or learning modes and then be annoyed that they exist when they serve as a purpose to feed people into the main game.
What blows my mind too is that they don't want it to exist, but it's not like if they were controlling it and if they're like, okay, we're not going to support it, doesn't mean people are going to stop playing it.
Sure. I mean,
And like,
technically, real quick,
it's a fan made
technically,
creation. Yeah.
Skirmish does not exist anymore, I think. Or is it Grand Army?
Grand Army doesn't exist anymore. It's Grand Army.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. My point's moot. Sorry about that.
Well, I mean, it's also, I mean, like, it's also something that the fandom made, and there's nothing stopping them from making their own version.
True.
But it also goes to a point that, like, if you can afford it, right? Because I get it, hobbies are expensive. That's a quote that I frequently throw at him. He's like, people were bitching about pricing on something. Yeah, hobbies are expensive. Any hobby you're in, I'm sure you can attest to that with your trucks. If you can afford to have another game that scratches a different itch, I don't know how anybody enjoys this hobby with one game without becoming the way that those people are.
Right.
Becoming toxic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's mainly where I look at a lot of these things when it comes down to like, I think it was our first contentious conjecture where we were talking about like people bemoaning non-historical miniatures in a game that isn't actually historical itself, as it's like technically an alternate reality in Team Yankee, as it's Cold War gone hot, where it's that same kind of like, you paid the money. If that's all you can afford, like that's all you have the time for, that's all that you have the space in your house, because maybe you live in like a tiny one room apartment, like I'm never gonna look at somebody and be like, hey, we can't work with you on this. Obviously rules for like a tournament or a gaming event, you gotta follow them, but there's ways to work with those players to help them be a part of the community and play the game that they bought into, without being like, sorry, you gotta spend like at least $300 more to play this game with us, and we're not even gonna talk to you then. God, kind of thing. I would much rather someone come out with what they had and experience the gaming community in a positive way, that they're incentivized to come back and help grow. Because you never know, maybe they get that promotion, they get that whatever. Christmas comes around, they get a couple more augmentations to their armies, and then boom, they're right there in the tournament scene with you, and they've been there the whole time, learning the lessons from like those more experienced. Or if you have people that don't mind other people touching their toys, then you can also share stuff too. I don't, as much as we talk about hobbies being expensive, To an extent, I want to be as understanding and open with people. Like, I'm not gonna buy you an army. Like, I'm not. I got a decent job. Uh, it ain't that good. I can't be fronting like people's armies every month kind of thing. Um, but like if you have just a core box, I'll find a way to get a game with you. If you have just like a couple, squads of Team Yankee that you just thought was cool, and there's no way in hell you can make a force out of it, I'll still get some games in with you. Like I just want to play the game, um, and play the rule set, which I think is a decent segue into. I'll let you pick which one we go into next. Because originally we said best rule system, but then you asked best game, and I was like, I still
I
want best
I
rule
think
system
I
because I
think
don't
that
think they're
might
the
have just
same.
been fair. I mean, I think I was just typing out game because it was less letters. Yeah.
That's fair. I mean,
What do you,
it's a good question. And
yeah.
we can go with.
When you frame it that way.
I mean, we can go with the rule set first because I said mine at the end of the last podcast, and I stand by it.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I stand. I mean, yeah, well, yeah, rule set. Yeah.
Cool. So I'll say Star Wars Armada, and I will give my reasoning as the reason I think Star Wars Armada out of all the games that I've played, and I'll just go ahead and list them just in case people haven't listened to the very first podcast where we talk about what games we played. I think we did that. But I play
Yeah.
Star Wars Legion, Star Wars Armada, Team Yankee, World of Tanks, Blood Red Sky, Gaslands, Victory at Sea. I have planned to play Gamma Wolves. I've read through the instructions. Gaslands? I don't remember if I said that or not. And I've
You did.
watched other game systems, and I've done demos to see if I would be intrigued enough to join in. But nothing else has really struck my fancy. So here we are with these. And out of all of the ones that I've observed and or played, Star Wars Armada takes the cake for me, which is frustrating because I will say it's not the best game. Um, Armada, there's no defensive dice, so there is no expectation of like I'm not going to take damage from this shot once the offense is rolled. It's the strategy of how do I minimize the damage coming to me right now. And that's, with their defensive tokens, with their defensive tech, all these different ways to, counter the fire that's coming towards you. So when that defensive dice is taken away from you, you can't it's not as upsetting. Like that damage is coming through regardless. And when you roll dice, that damage is going through regardless. Whatever you roll. Yeah, you can blank out. But then that's just the way the dice go. But it feels real bad. And this is someone who plays mainly white saves and Legion. 6-up saves, I think they're called.
They're 5-ups. If they surge, they're 5-ups.
Yeah, well, droids don't surge, my man. So
Fair.
so 6
We
ups.
called that would be a T-shirt save if
Yeah.
you're coming from Games Workshop games. That's a
Yeah.
T-shirt.
So droids, t-shirts. A lot of my rebels do surge, so 5-up. It's not the worst, but I just fully expect that even though I am given this chance and I have very minimal defense technology, I'm just gonna pick up units for whatever damage is rolled. In Armada, though, you can reduce it, half it, move it, all these different ways to deal with it. The way the movement works, I think, is super succinct, super easy to understand. Even when it comes to overlapping squadrons and moving squadrons, I don't think that is as complex. I think it only gets that way when you have mass horde on horde ships, squadrons, and in which case you're doing that to yourself. It's just like Victory at Sea, where if like, hey, you want to bring 50, 60 squadrons, well, that's not the game's fault. That's you being ridiculous. So like you're gonna deal with that mess. And they've come up with rules to augment that, so you can't really take all of those ships. Well, I guess you still can. They just reduce the aces. For me, it's mainly how I feel when interacting with attack stuff. Like I've always kind of preferred the card game style of how damage is dealt, where you have a unit, you know how much damage it does, and you know how much damage it can take. Yes, you've got stuff that modifies it, but it's flat, so you know when it attacks, it's doing whatever it's doing. Whereas when you roll dice, it's like, well, yeah, I'm throwing 12 dice. They could be 12 blanks. Like I get that that's kind of part of the chance kind of thing, but it's still taking an element out of the control of the players and is really more focused on, like, a lot of the best upgrades are how do we re-roll our dice to make them more consistent, just like World of Tanks. Like you stack those defensive upgrades and you stack those offensive upgrades that let you re-roll dice. It's just another. It's just ridiculous on how consistent damage you can output. So I like that the speed of the game is increased by. You just got to play your tokens right, and you have a limited number of them per turn. So good luck. Don't be stupid and charge in, because your opponent may get first shot on you if you screw this up, kind of thing. I like the upgrade system. I like the points. Ultimately, it just feels like you're moving a naval battle. The only thing you don't get is the 3D space. It's one of the big jokes in Star Wars anyways, so I'm not too upset about it. But it just feels like it's there. And then I'll just preface the reason I don't think it's the best game that I played is mainly because there's no real support for it right now. And ultimately, unlike Legion, I don't think the product or the IP supports infinite expansions, if that makes sense.
Right, there's a finite amount of content there.
Yeah, and the ships don't get, like, you get a new show, you get like what, 6 main characters, maybe you get like a new stormtrooper in different armor, maybe you see a new Clone Wars droid that you've never seen before, stuff like that. So that instantly makes like your new show just generated potentially like 8 new products, depending on how you make them and market them. With with Armada, like you look around and you're like, okay, I guess I can get the spycraft from Andor. I guess I could get Ahsoka's ship. We already have the Ghost. Maybe we get a re-release of the Chimera, this time with gold bits on it. Spoiler alert. It's just super limited without going super deep into EU stuff. Which, I mean, I know people are going to jump on me if they are Star Wars fans and they look and they're like, oh, what about the Lucre Hulk, the Carrion Spike, all of these different named MC-80 variants, all these different Star Destroyers. What about an Eclipse? What about this? What about that? Yes, I understand, but I think there's a more finite ship possibility than there are characters. So I think it gets harder and harder because one of the things people talk about with X-wing is like it was super easy and identifiable early on, and part of the thing that they did with 2.0 was at that time a lot of ships that were on the table were stuff like you only ever saw in comic books or maybe some of the video games like Rogue Squadron. Um, you didn't see X-wings or TIE interceptors or anything like that, just because they weren't good. So 2.0 brought it around where like, hey, you want to take Luke in an X-wing? Take Luke in an X-wing. Super recognizable. People see it on the table, know they love Star Wars, never seen this before. Now they're asking questions, kind of thing. And it's like not a lot of people as much maybe have played, or watched Clone Wars, so they know what the carrion spike is. Shit like that. A lot of people will go purely off the movies, and a lot of the newer live action shows. So that's the only reason I think that it's not going to be the best game is because the support's not there. A lot of the stuff that still needs to be added is not as identifiable for a lot of people. So, while I love the game system, I do not think it's the best game.
If it had the support, would you classify it as the best game?
It would still be tough because I still look at it realistically and I go, like, even if they were still putting out, I'll be generous and I'll say, like, what they were doing in FFG's final years with the property, um, the game, is I will say even if they were doing a release a year, which they kind of have with the paper releases that they've done, even if they were doing a release a year, I still feel like this game, barring some new huge space content where we get a real battle like Return of the Jedi. I still think there's a uh, limited product support for them to go into, and so the game will kind of have a finite, unless you turn around and you do what FFG was doing, where like technically they weren't really doing a lot of plastic upgrades with the two expansions. I'm blanking on their name, but the campaigns, like
Oh, yeah, like something Outer Rim.
yeah, crap, I can't
I just
remember.
know of them because I see them when I walk the shelves.
Yeah, like that's really cool and really great, but you need consistent players to like play through it fully and get the great effect from it. Otherwise, you're buying it like I did just for the upgrades and expansions, like new. You don't get new plastic, but you make it a new squadron card of like, hey, Hera's in a B wing now, or Darth Vader's now in TIE Defender kind of stuff. I know those came out in the paper releases, but I'm just using examples of like they basically put heroes and stuff that already had characters elsewhere in the game, as well as like a bunch of, unless you're like a super nerd, you have no idea who these people are or these creatures or sentient beings are, kind of thing. So I think it still has a finite method, or not method, but a finite like product option, unless we get like a new Death Star 2 battle scene kind of thing, and they expanded that because they never got First Order and Resistance expansions in Armada. Like we barely got Clone Wars before that thing ended, so um, yeah, I don't think there was ultimately much of a future for it, but it could still use like upgrade, like an upgrade card pack here or there, to just flush out what you already have. So what's
All right.
your favorite game system?
I'd say my favorite slash best game slash system. I'm gonna pick one for the same one for both, and I'll preface it also by saying that it's probably good that we don't play the exact same games. Because you picked a
Right.
game that I have never played. I picked a game to my knowledge, you have never played. Uh, and I play all the games that you listed other than Armada and a few more than that to boot. Um, but for best rule set slash best game, I'm gonna go with Marvel Crisis Protocol. In terms of just what it sets out to do, which from your description and your pitching Armada as the winner for this contentious conjecture, if you will, it also does what it says on the tin really really well. Crisis Protocol does exactly what it sets out to do, and it's in terms of both flavor and mechanics wise, it does it really really well. I can get into the miniatures and the hobby aspect, but that's not really. I don't think that's really what we're trying to
No, because I
make
mean,
an argument for.
let's be real. Any game system that has miniatures in some form or another, from Hot Wheels to MCP, uh, that level of enjoyment is different for everyone.
Sure, sure. So yeah, ignoring that, I think just from the way the rules work, it is the classic easy to learn, difficult to master. It supports in the way it's written both incredibly casual play where you're like, I just remember watching the X-Men cartoon. I like playing the X-Men. My buddy likes it too. They're going to pick up Brotherhood of Mutants and play Magneto, and you can have an enjoyable experience and a fulfilling and rewarding one, right? Like as miniatures games go, you're going to feel like you get to do impactful things. You can have tactics and strategy. Just going, I just pick the people that are X-Men, right? Because in that game, just to for those who haven't played, you do not have to play strictly in faction. You don't have to play a team that makes sense, right? I could have Captain America and Red Skull on the same side fighting for the same cause. It doesn't matter for mechanics wise, which then opens up the fact that there's 130, I think, thereabouts, um, individual characters in the game, and you can mix and match uh, any of them together. The only restriction, though, is just like your point mission, your the point value for the mission you're going to play. But however you want to slot those in, you can build it thematically, and it supports it 100%. You can build it purely to be as sweaty as possible, and take as punishing of a team as possible, as oppressive as one as possible, and it supports that. But it rewards all different kinds of play while being, for the most part, one of the more clear and understandable games to learn and to teach that I've played. And I've probably miniatures war games, barring board games that have miniatures, I'm thinking maybe 20 I've played over the 15, 16 years I've been in the hobby. And it when it works really well, it's really rewarding to play, to see your team function and do what you design it to do. To be fair, I don't really play anything other than purely thematically. Like, I usually give myself a single meta slot choice in my list. You make a 10-man roster, and that's what you pick from. And for the most part, if I can get 9 of those characters in faction, or at the very least they make sense thematically, that like, okay, I'm going to play X-Force, the militant half of the X-Men. I might not have an X-Force member in there, but as long as they're a mutant, it makes sense for me. And then I'll pick one meta pick, just because some of the people that play, and that's cool if that's how they like it, they play really competitively, and I'm like, oh, I need to have those answers. So just best game, they have the license. You talked about there not being a ton of content left. MCP, their license is, if I remember correctly, and I'm almost 100% certain it is for the comic specifically to make content off of. It is not necessarily the movies. So they have the entirety of Marvel's history to draw upon for content. Don't get me wrong, of course they're gonna mine the what's the new hot thing. Um, and for the most part, they use a lot of the designs that you would see in the movies. But uh, that's my pick for best game slash rule set. It everything it wants to do. Like if you had like the high points in a design document, like you're like, hey, this is the game we're gonna make. Your elevator pitch, if you will. I think it hits every single one that they probably set out to do and knocks it out of the park.
I would definitely agree with that. MCP is not one I've demoed, but I've sat and watched you play. I've watched Adam play. I've asked questions to kind of understand how it is, and I think it's something that even Adam and I have talked about because I demoed kind of the sister game to it, Shatterpoint, because I am a huge Star Wars nerd. I love Star Wars, and ultimately, I'm not a huge fan of the Jedi aspect. But give me a clone army squad. I would have been a sucker for uh, Leia and some fuzzy teddy bears. Queen Amidala and the Handmaids. Like, I would have definitely dived in on them. I've picked up a lot of those as models. Jango Fett. And as much as I'm not a huge fan of Magic, I still love the Night Sisters a lot. Um, I don't know. Goth Dami Mommy witches in red. Mm, that's something to a person.
I mean, quick aside, I gotta say, I think the design they did for the Night Sisters, just as a model, is probably one of the best models, Star Wars models they've made since they
Yeah,
took over the property. It's
yeah.
so good. I want them just to paint them.
Well, and they weren't going to take over the property as a whole. Like, reminder, they were working on this game
Sure.
way before, you know, Asmodee was like, nah, we hate our player base. We're going to do this for money. And, gave it to AMG. Um, it is fantastic models, though. I just want to, like, I won't ride too hard for AMG, but I do at least every time this that comes up, I'm like, don't be mad at AMG. Don't be mad at AMG. Because it like inevitably always sparks some sort of like confrontation of people being like, they've ruined X game. Anyways, like I demoed Shatterpoint, and I was just disappointed because like I've watched everything that you've done. Like I've seen a number of different games that you've played. I've seen Adam play a number of different games, and the fluff that gets turned into rules like Storm or Hulk, all those kind of things where they just get like these really cool abilities. Uh, Jedi are, it's not flashy like a superhero. It's not super unique like a superhero. It is,
And effectively, they all do the same thing.
yeah, or they shoot, and it's like I get that there's heroes in Marvel that that may be their shtick, but somehow like I've seen you guys play a number. I think Adam, or maybe it was one of your opponents, Deathstroke.
He's DC.
Who's the Marvel equivalent?
Probably Deadpool
I didn't think it was him
or
because I
Punisher.
Punisher. I think, yeah. I felt like I was watching that game, and it still felt more unique than playing like the Arc Squad that I demoed, and I was just kind of like, ah, this does not scratch an itch that's different than Legion, essentially. I was like, there's nothing about this game other than its scale that makes me want. Well, I don't know. I don't want to give up Legion, even over its scale. But I was like, there's nothing that this does better enough than Legion that makes me want to drop more money on another miniature line. And it was such a bummer playing Shatterpoint after seeing what you guys get in MCP.
Yeah. And now, to be fair, Shatterpoint is a very young game, but I even remember playing just out of the core set with MCP when it came out, uh, and it was just so much more, yeah, it was so much more character, and the mission variety, at this point in MCP's lifespan, there's probably, we'll say, 18-ish missions, and you run two missions concurrently and extract and secure. So you take into account all the different possible combinations you can have and how they interact with the list that you play. That for the most part, there are a few meta choice missions that a lot of us take because they make all your good stuff even better and it's fun. But truly no two games can be the same because of the number of missions, and there's so much flavor and content to draw on to create unique experiences that I just don't feel like, at least right now, Shatterpoint has. So
Yeah.
I
So
guess we kind of got off the track of best game ever and started shitting on Shatterpoint.
not really, because
I want it to be good though.
not really. It was mainly emphasizing why MCP is good, even though I haven't actually played that.
Yeah, fair.
Um,
I've
but
I've
like
never
what?
played Armada, to be fair.
Yeah, but the comparator was to like something we've both played, and maybe our listeners have played, where a lot of people assumed they would be the same because they're the same scale, they're made by the same manufacturer, same designer. So a lot of people were like, "Oh man, this is just going to be a reskin," and turns out it's not quite. And because of the IP, not shitting on Star Wars because I love Star Wars, it just doesn't lend itself to a lot of the creativity that MCP allows in terms of like what your units can do. Like I don't think they'll ever truly get that unless they go super crazy into Darth Bane, Nihilus, that era of stuff, and that's still not interesting enough to me because it's not why I like Star Wars. But that will lead me into my best and favorite game, which is Star Wars Legion, because it really lets me do, even with my cheesy ass themes of for what I do with my armies, it still lets me do the thing that I love in Star Wars, where you can take small like armies essentially. I know it's an army builder, all that kind of stuff, but to me, it's more like what people were hoping you'd get out of Shatterpoint in It's a Star Wars episode. And what I mean by that is a lot of the times, Anakin walks up, he's got Obi-Wan, maybe he's got Rex, but he's also got clones to support, and they go fight to take over this town. And oh my God, there's an AAT in the square, and there's battle droids everywhere. And oh no, there's Kalani over there doing droid things, kind of stuff. So it gives you enough without being like full on Battle of Naboo, armies marching across the field towards each other. Like it gives you enough that you can still reenact, some of those scenes from the movies or from the shows. Uh, or you go completely crazy, like my armies, where my droids, I've got two full fucking droid armies. One, House of Serrano for Count Dooku. Two, Elish Norn comes to Star Wars. So the droids are all red and white with mirror heads. My rebels are Andor Ferrix uprising rebels. My empire is I always pronounce the name wrong, and you always know what it is. Joris Saboth?
Oh, I always said it Joris Sabaoth, but I don't know if that's correct. I
Sounds better, more intelligent
never
than
heard
what I
like an
said.
yeah, I've never heard an official source say one way or the other.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, the old EU version of a cloned emperor gone mad. So like essentially my army's all like clone stuff. So my emperor is in blue, my royal guard are in blue, but it's still the regular royal guard armor. Stuff like that, where a lot of stuff will be tinged blue instead of whatever the standard is, because that was the color of the book jacket. And so I was like, oh, it just to me it makes sense.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and my clones are all Naboo Special Defense Force. Like the armor was bought for the self defense force for Naboo, so it's all like normal troopers, not clones. So it's painted up as like the yellow and brown uh, standing army, the red and blue officers, all that kind of stuff. Similar to the N1 starfighters, the yellow and chrome. So like I do all that weird stuff, but I still like it's all for the narrative in my head of like, yeah, this is the Ferrix uprising. Were Tauntauns there? We don't know. We don't know what was on the outskirts of the town when everything really kicked off, and you know, is the canon of the clone emperor all that much anymore? Well, kind of, because it comes in the resistance and the final order. It's like whatever. Mine's a little bit of a spinoff. Um, and that's like ultimately why I just love that game is because of the stories that I can tell in my own head. Like when Han, Chewie, and your Wookiees engaged my Pathfinders and Jin and Ahsoka. Like I see it as like you may have had a different story in your head, but for me it was like, oh, we're encountering smugglers on this planet who are, shipping stuff to the Empire before Han ever really joined up with the rebels. Like in my mind, because I don't think you had any. Oh shit! Did you have Leia in that list?
Nope.
Eh, it
Nope.
wouldn't have mattered.
No. It is Han
Yeah,
Chewie.
yeah. Can't change. Can't change.
So I played Leia entirely too many times. I don't want to play with her anymore.
That's fair. Can't change the story in my head, but it's just yeah. The rules are not super clean in areas. I mean, you can kind of consider cover super clean when you just give everything cover because you don't want to deal with it. Uh, but other than that, like it is legitimately a easy, comfortable game system to play the game in, and the rules don't get in the way of your enjoyment. Not the way like Team Yankee or Victory at Seed does from time to time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Shall we move on to contentious conjecture number 3?
Was that not number three?
Oh, I got lost there. Oh, I see what you did.
Because you combined your
Yeah,
best rule and your best
that's fair.
game,
Yeah.
so we still had to cover my best game because Armada is my favorite rule set.
Gotcha.
Legion is probably still my favorite game. It is the one that I will definitely continue to buy. Like I'll buy sets for Armada if they ever come out again. But Legion, like I always have to have at least one of everything. And I every time something comes out like bugs or Ewoks, I'm like, oh, shit, I have a plan. I have a plan on how I want this to look. Like I'm pretty certain all of my Ewoks are going to be welders, and they're going to be Ferrex themed,
Ooh, I like it.
and they're going to have little hard hats. Uh, I don't know what I'm going to do for the slingers yet, but welders seems like perfect for a bunch of Ewoks. So like as soon as they release something, like something will immediately flash in my head that's like, you need this. This is going to be the theme that they're going to fit into your current standing army. And I'm like, fuck. All right, I need 9 Ewoks. Shit, kind of thing. It's the only one. Every other game system, I'm not compelled. Victory at Sea, Blood Red Sky, World of Tanks. Yeah, they're fun, they're enjoyable, they scratch the itch, and maybe that's something that we can talk about on a next episode is the influences that may have brought us to gaming. Because like, I know I've told you that each game that I play scratches a physical manifestation of a video game, essentially from my childhood. So I think that'd be something interesting in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you want to cover?
What are you looking forward to?
Not
Anything
miniature
other
games?
than the usual Gamma Wolves?
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
because
Yeah.
Saturdays are pre-release for Star Wars Unlimited, and I'm super excited.
Same. We got 12 people.
I saw that earlier today. I'm super happy. A lot of names I didn't recognize. A lot
Yeah.
of names that haven't showed up to any of our events yet. So hopefully they stick around with the community. And we already know there's a number of members in our community already that are not going to be there due to Emerald City Comic Con. So
Yep.
I'm super
Because
excited.
just our area apparently.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, I gotta
oh,
make an account for Chase so he can sign up because he's an old man.
I don't even think you need to make an account. I think you just click on the link. I don't think I signed up for Best Coast.
You did. You're on there.
Yeah, what I mean is like I just clicked on the link, I put in my information. I didn't make an account or anything
I see what you're saying.
because I've never had an account on there because it was TTO and then Game Uplink. Anyways,
Yeah, it would have been nice if yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Other thing I'm looking forward to now is my favorite 3D artist. You remember how I sent you a rendering of one of the things that he was making?
Yeah.
Yeah, he just posted again recently, and he's like, "Hey, I heard your feedback. Here's a lot of modular shit for the Armored Core." And I was like, "Oh my god, I can have actual Armored Core parts for my Gamma Wolves now." So that comes out in March, and I am just like freaking the fuck out. I cannot wait. I told Chase that I have a week off in April, and I'm gonna try and figure out the curling and the flaring of the flat edges on his water moccasin.
Yeah.
So I can hopefully be done with that, and then just have Gamma Wolves. Gamma Wolves, Gamma Wolves, Gamma Wolves. I periodically break that rule book out, man, and just like reread it. It's so cool. I fucking love it. I want to play, but yeah. Well, anything else you want to say to people?
Don't be so sweaty all the time. Just play games for fun.
Yeah.
And let other people have their fun.
Yeah. If you're having a hard time growing a community for whatever game system you're playing, but you cannot let someone, play the game or even win, because I promise you, you don't need to like just give it to them, but you don't need to go all in. And a lot of the times, if you don't, it's super easy to just like not do the most optimal thing. Gives them a win, gives them a taste, and they're like, they'll understand that you probably let them, but it's that first hook. So be nice, help people get into your games. Your community will grow.
Yeah,
You'll have
think like a
more
drug
people to play
dealer.
with. Say again.
Think like a drug dealer.
Yeah.
First taste free.
Yeah, you're that pusher. You want to get that plastic or resin crack into their hands and let them shuffle it around the table to do the thing that they need to do. And then, I'm not saying you got to do that for like the first few times you play. Just give them the first one. And then do what I do. Be like, all right, I took it easy on your learning game. Do you want to see the true abuse? Because if you have a good attitude about it, Link, Kyle number 5, because he got demoted, um,
Yeah.
and Jed, all of them, I was like, all right, do you really want to see what Ahsoka can do? And they're like, fuck it, yeah, I want to see what how we can like really like play this game and how crazy it can get. And like when you have that positive attitude with them and like you can do that thing and then it shows them that like, oh, this can be really complex and it can do all this other stuff. Really it comes down to the attitude and like helping people get into it so that you can grow and play more games. If you want to be selfish, think about it that way. The more people you get in, the more games you play. Ta-da!
Chad.
That's Aaron.
Bye bye now.
And I'm Fi. Bye!